Here's a place where all of us can be safe. Our stories of transformation can be safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while, because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys. Hey friends, welcome back. I have Holly McNeill here today. She is the creator of P.E.R.L.O.V.E. It's a mindfulness and meditation guide, technique, however you feel to formulate the words. Journey, yes. She's going to come in today and not only talk about how she created this program, but also her backstory. So thank you so much. We're finally together recording this episode. I'm so excited.
Yeah, thank you, Cheyenne. And I have to tell you, timing's everything. When we connected, I don't know how long ago it's been now, 2 or 3 months ago, or maybe even longer, right? I was just thinking today that this is the perfect time because these practices continue to evolve and my experiences continue to develop. And I think for your show and the depth of your audience, I think this is the perfect time. So here we are.
I believe in every word that you just said because I've had that happen with multiple people where we're like, we're ready to go, and then something happens in either or of our lives. And then finally when we get in, we're like, actually, it feels right now. Like, it's amazing how you don't realize it until you're actually in the moment, and you have a lot of gratitude in retrospect for divine timing. But in the moment, you're like, I want to do it now. I'm ready to speak now.
Yeah. Absolutely. The divine timing. I love that, putting it that way for sure. So this is it. This is the divine timing.
This is the day. So talk to me about P.E.R.L.O.V.E. and really what it is first before we talk about what inspired you to create it.
Okay. So P.E.R.L.O.V.E. is an acronym. It stands for Pledge, Evaluate, Recognize, Locate, Open, Vest, and Expand, which we'll get into the detail of that later. But what it really is a journey that will take you from the small and isolated to however far you want to go, to the infinite, to the door. You know, the first 3 practices take you to the door of self-exploration. And then it's really up to you how far, if you want to get all the way to be expanding beyond your conditioned limits. And so it's a mindfulness and meditation set of practices that, as we talked about, starts with just 6 minutes a day for all of you out there that are looking for the quick fix. And I created them. They came into being. They showed up about 2 years ago. I've been teaching them online since a year ago, January, and I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback because I'm actually an architect. I've done large hospital work nationally and internationally across the country from coast to coast, and so my gift is clarity and putting big puzzles together, which you have to do to build hospitals and other things. And so these practices are actually based and influenced on all the teachers and gurus that I encountered over a 20-year journey, which we'll get into more here. But it's not like I'm making any of this stuff up. It's just they all seem to point back to a few simple truths. And these practices are kind of the, A plus B equals C package of those truths.
So they're definitely a combination of experiences you went through over the last probably 34 years, I would say.
Well, it started when I was 34, but the journey was about 20 years long. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. I want to make sure I get those numbers right. So when you go all the way back to where it began, because I see a lot of, stepping stones that have created this program and this person and all of the work that you're doing now. It obviously comes from a lot of direct experience in a bunch of different facets. So when did this exploration into this happen for you?
Well, it happened at a very, very low point when I was at age 34. And I just finished the Hollywood Fringe Festival this last June. And I had this opening monologue in it, which was hard to do. And by the way, I'm glad I did it, but I'll never do it again. They don't call you a Hollywood Fringe veteran for anything. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's just you just can do a show. You produce it, you write it, and you're up there with 300 other shows and acts trying to get people to come. And anyway, it was really cool. But I had this opening monologue, right? In the beginning of the monologue, I talk about how when I was young, I learned I was unlovable and unworthy. Right? So I created the perfect world to hide my perceived flaws, right? And I was really, really good at it. I had, not only was my career, flourishing, I had my handsome husband and I built a beautiful home for our two lovely children, where we housed our nice cars and hosted our great friends. But the foundations of that life was flawed, right? Based on, my own insecurities, anxieties, feelings of unworthiness. And at age 34, that all imploded. Just huge, a lot of things happened, and basically sitting on the toilet in the middle of the night, just bawling my eyes out. I made this vow: life, God, Buddha, the universe, anyone out there listening, please give me another chance and I'll do better. Give me a second chance and I'll change. So Cheyenne, I was given that second chance. With my karmic debt in tow, I went out to make good on that vow. So age 34. Yeah, I'm 56 now. So
oh my God.
Right. You know what? It's right around the time of 9/11, actually.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, the whole world was in this horrible, horrible place.
Yeah.
And I was right there along with it. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I just went back to obviously where I was at 9/11, and I definitely wasn't in anything that you were experiencing. I mean, I was literally in my backyard in a small town doing a candlelight vigil for everybody with our family members, Wow,
but I can't imagine
already like going through all of that, and then the collective sadness of the world that we all felt at the same time. I mean, literally like the world was falling on your head is what I see.
Yeah, exactly. And I was so lost and so stuck back then, which is who I'm trying to reach these days. I didn't even know what better was. I had no idea what I had just vowed to do. I just knew it had to be better with what I was experiencing, and of course what the world was experiencing back then, with such a low place. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody was frightful. We can definitely all attest to that, especially if you were in New York. I mean, I'm sure they still have support groups over it. I can't even imagine being around any of that. But it's definitely like a moment of clarity in a sad way to be like sitting in your bathroom in the middle of the night, because oddly, like, my bathroom is like my safe space where I know nobody's going to come in and bug me. So like I've released some stuff in there. So like I feel you when you say like, oh, I'm crying in the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I'm like, please. Okay. Like I realize I've not necessarily gone the wrong path, because I don't ever want anyone to think like they've gone a wrong path. There really isn't like a right or wrong. It's a part of the journey, and realizing, releasing, awareness, all of that fun stuff. But like I can picture you in that bathroom, and I'm like, I've been in that bathroom. Like I've had these same conversations with the celestial divine connection up above, where I'm like, you hear me, right? Like I didn't mess up so bad that like you can't hear my cries, because I just had an epiphany, and is it too late? Those were always my things. So I'm like, am I too late? Am I too late? Am I too late?
Yeah, I was so scared and so lost, and like I said, on the outside it looked like I had it all, but it was the lowest point of my self-absorbed, anxiety-filled, unhappy life. And I got that second chance. It wasn't too late, and you're right. It took me. I guess I needed to get that stuck to want to get to where I am today. And unfortunately for a lot of people, it takes that, right? It takes that rock bottom moment, or that there's got to be something better than this moment. But I made that vow, Cheyenne, and in keeping it wouldn't be easy, right? The first thing, it catapulted me out of a mutually manipulative and controlling marriage and into an 8-year battle for my children. It would take everything I had back then, which wasn't much at all, to prevent my children's permanent alienation from me. My father had been alienated from us as a child, and so that's where I got he doesn't love me anymore, what did I do wrong, my unworthiness. So I knew how important it was to stay in that fight. But towards the end of the battle, my boys came to me and they said, Mom, we're going on vacation with Dad, and we're not coming back. And they're 13 and 15 at this time, and I knew that taking them to court to protect the custody I already had could mean them potentially having to testify against me. And I couldn't do that to them, But something told me I had done enough, and so I took off my armor, I laid down my sword, and I left that battlefield forever. I was temporarily alienated from them for a number of years, actually. But during that same time and making that vow and keeping it, I tripped upon this amazing path, right? We don't have to know how we're going to get to where we're going to get to. We just have to put that intention out there and believe it to be true and stick with it. They started giving me answers when I needed it and the right people, situations, and events to help me along my way. Like those 8 years, for example, I needed that. Like every day, trying to be strong in front of the boys and then just crumbling when they were gone, trying to find that strength every day, trying to realize there's more than myself in this world. I mean, I definitely learned the story of other during those 8 years, but I needed those. I mean, of course I hated them being in the middle, but those 8 years changed me, and I don't wish them on anyone, but I don't regret them for myself personally.
Well, I mean, I think when you talked about rock bottom, a lot of us are trained rock bottom as like getting into really bad habits and disregarding responsibilities and just like truly falling down like a dark, dark hole, whether it's like a drug addict, whatever you want to talk about. Your rock bottom was being so egotistically successful that it stifled your soul to the point that you literally broke. So I want to like honor all of the things that you did, because I think it's amazing that you went to school. I think it's amazing you're an architect. And yes, those are all of the building blocks that took you there, including the horrible divorce, and anything with kids just absolutely breaks my heart, especially when proper co-parenting isn't a thing. It wasn't like co-parenting wasn't a word when I grew up either. So like my heart always goes out, because I was a kid who didn't have like really good co-parenting. Like, yeah, they could drop the kids off together, but they still like talk shit about each other, like to the kids, and that's kind of like their unhealed stuff. But I recognize that now, and there's a lot of forgiveness. But there was a documentary I saw where this guy, he had kind of like gotten really big in the corporate world, but he had also died inside. He was just an empty shell. So like he cashed out everything and went and started looking for like the meaning of life. So, how we all do, and we're like, well, that guy sitting up in the Himalaya only eating berries, levitating seems pretty peaceful. So like, what is he doing, Because we're so allured with the physical world, especially in America. There's so many distractions that like this is it. And it's, it's a distraction. So he was sitting on the side of this river with this guy of, I don't even know how to say it, but just picture like the robe and the ash on his face, sitting there in, lotus for days, speaking as if it was God coming to you through him. And he said, why do people go down the path of materialism and success? And when they do, they get everything they want. Why do they, almost want to like kill themselves? They're like, oh God, I did it wrong. I did this wrong. And he said the greatest reply that I remind myself and others all the time. And he says the ego has to succeed. It has to get the job. It has to get the degree. It has to get the car. It has to have the kids. It has to have the wife or the husband. The ego has to succeed at everything. And then when it does, and it's still empty, that is when the spiritual journey begins. And I was like, holy shit, yes.
Yeah,
and that's why I didn't feel that
it's interesting. I call one of my classes, the main class that's free to people, we'll talk about that later, the lost formula to happiness. And I was speaking to someone, and they're like, well, happiness was back in the 80s, and NLP and all the mind, or the NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, right? And so I started questioning some of my peers and some of my mentors. What do you think about the name of my class, The Lost Formula to Happiness? And we got to this conclusion that what is happiness? What defines happiness? And it's exactly, for a lot of people, what you say, what the ego needs. And the ego defines happiness as that car, as that relationship, as that person in your life, But but life is messy, right? And so you're going to have ups and downs regardless of your economic situation, your gender identity, your location, your race. And so I define happiness, as others do, as that balance, that middle way of being okay regardless of what happens on the outside, right? That equanimity, that lack of attachment, between aversion and what's the other word? Between attachment and aversion, being able to be at peace regardless of what's happening to you on the outside. Absolutely. And also, sorry to interrupt, but one of the things I like about these practices is, yes, a lot of people hit rock bottom and go to the Himalayas and eat berries, but a lot of people don't have that opportunity to do that. And these practices can actually get you there. I'm telling you from experience, they can get you there without having to, go live in a cave or become a monk or a nun. They're very practical and applicable, which is what is so joyful about them, I think.
Well, the first time I found Buddhism, I was recommended. My friend had just moved to a new city, and he was just telling me what it was like to like truly be on your own and really try to like map your own road, and the loneliness that comes in and the distractions, and how you really have to truly hold yourself accountable for what you want to do. And it was, the first time that he really experienced this. So he started getting into like, I think a little bit of yoga, definitely meditation, and he was dabbling in just researching Buddhism. So like he called me and he's like, hey, I've been doing this. He's like, just check it out. Like, it's fascinating. And it's stuff that where we came from, like we didn't know that this existed, because again, information when we were growing up isn't the information age now, right? So the only thing we know is like Jesus is king and this is the Midwest. So like, you really didn't explore like past that. So I remember anything this guy was ever like, hey, go check this out, I trusted him enough to be like, yeah, I'm totally going to go check that out. Whether it works for me or not, I still like, you speak to me, I will listen to you. And as I started reading it felt like familiar and it made sense, and it answered a lot of the questions that a lot of the other religious places I had sat couldn't answer at all. And I remember just being like, I think I'm literally just going to like give up on the whole 3D America aspect and like find a country and just like go live peacefully. I'm not saying like I wanted to be a monk by any means, but I was like, there's something missing here. And I've known it and have been reminded from it like over and over from a really, really young age. So when you came across Buddhism, like, what were your first, like, breadcrumbs from it that you're like, this is transformational, this is revolutionary to my soul?
Yeah, actually, like I said, from the very moment I made this vow, the first book I tripped upon was You Stand Up for Your Life by Cheryl Richardson. And in the introductory, it says, be careful what you ask for, because the people, things, and events will show up in your life, and they do, right? And so there's a series, and the practices are a culmination of neuroscience, psychology, spiritualism, and Buddhism. But for me, when I was literally, I kept moving. I'm from the Black Hills of South Dakota. I kept moving to Minneapolis to grow my spirituality and my career. And then I moved to New York. I literally Googled, meditation near me. And this is just how things kept showing up. It's all about mindset. When Buddhism and things show up in your life, that means you're ready for them, right? And so 1 mile away from my office, I went to this class, and it was on, they have general programs, the New Kadampa tradition of Buddhism. And the second class, it was a great class on compassion or giving and taking, I'm not sure. But after the second class, I heard another student walk up to the teacher and say, hey, is there a deeper class that I can take? And she said, you know what? We just finished a 5-year book study on Joyful Path. And in 2 weeks, we're starting a new book study on a book called The New Heart of Wisdom, which was all about enlightenment. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me, right? Because I had seen in this kind of little space in my mind, which we can talk about later. But the fact that I showed up, I had moved from Rapid City all the way to New York City area. And like within 2 weeks, this 2-year book study, just step by step, moment by moment, into emptiness and awareness and what it all meant was just there for me. And like everything else, it just blew me away. Every time I read any piece of, like you said, if you're ready for it, these things will answer your questions. And I find that Buddhism, I practiced Buddhism for 5 years. I lived in a Dharma house. Yeah, age 49, I once again packed up everything I knew, packed up everything I had, left everyone I knew to move across the country and live in a Dharma house in San Francisco. And I lived there for a year. And And ironically, they were on the same book because I was halfway through the book, almost on the same page, which is amazing.
Oh, talk
But
about
I learned,
synchronicity.
yeah, the timing of everything, Cheyenne, has been amazing. But I think it's that way for everyone if you're looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Buddhism and the practices, and it's all right there. But I find that for a lot of, even though the New Kadampa tradition is kind of talked about as westernized Buddhism, right? A lot of the times the clear concepts are harder still to understand for Westerners, right? And so that's the whole second part of the formula is about those spiritual practices. So yeah, I loved it, and it just brought a lot of clarity to me. But it wouldn't be until the COVID pandemic. So my whole journey was between 9/11 and the COVID pandemic that I was reading a book I had read before. A lot of times you can read a book, and if you're not in the same place, you read it 10 years later, and it's like so much more comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I read this book called You Can Be Happy No Matter What by Dr. Richard Carlson. He wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And at the very beginning, it's 5 principles to happiness. And at the very beginning of that book, there's this teeny tiny little kind of credit. Oh, by the way, the first 4 of these principles, the principles of feeling, the principles of mood, the principle of separate realities, and the principle of thoughts, they're all, I took out of this other book from the 1980s called, and you're going to love this title, Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense.
Send me a PDF.
A New Breakthrough to Happiness. A book that never went anywhere, a book that didn't get any kind of recognition, but I read that book, and in reading that, it just tied everything together. And one day I printed out this book proposal, and I looked over, and I could see it all. It was amazing. It was amazing. So not just the Buddhist aspect of it, but the neuroscience and the spirituality and the psychology all pointed back to these things. It still blows me away to talk about it, you know. So I'm just happy to be here and joyful and grateful to be able to share these with as many people as I can, you know, with the time I have left.
Mm-hmm. I love when you're feeling the gratitude from a past memory, like over and over and over. It really just adds to the vibrancy of the present moment. You're like, oh, I know I went through this crazy thing, but oh, do you remember how you feel when, you know, this connected and this connected? Again, I call them the little breadcrumbs. Now I call them glimmers. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that meme going around where everyone's talking about triggers, and then they're like, do you know what a glimmer is? Because it's like that moment of happiness, of hope. You know, you can hold on to those too. You don't always have to focus on the trigger of everything. So now I've been looking for all the glimmers in it, and that's like epiphany is like one of my favorite words. Karma and epiphany are 2 of my favorite words. Not to steal your story, but I do want to interject. I have them tattooed on my wrist, and I tattooed them
I love it.
on my wrist at 18. So 18, I was getting ready to go to like a college party at my friend's place back in Macomb, Illinois, and I stopped at the tattoo shop, and I was like, I need to put karma on my wrist. And he was like, okay. And I was like, it's like, without knowing it, like, you know, it's like the channel thing, like this needs to be a part of me, this needs to be in front of me. It's like if I had a spirit guide yelling at me, they're like, the only way she's going to get through this is if we tattoo reminders on her body. Like, swear to God, like that's kind of how it felt to me. So every time I would come up on a concept that I was really like married to for my life, I would be like, this is literally like vitally important. It isn't just like, oh, I pick out cool words and put them on my body. Like, these are my lifesavers. These are almost my mantras. These are my reminders of like what I'm doing here, what I'm here for, but also how they talk to me is those little glimmers and those little epiphanies. So I did them like a week apart, and throughout my whole life where I've battled the darkness that I have in my own personal journey, when I have those memories of, oh my gosh, you remember how you felt? You know, you're talking to your past self. You're like, when you read that book, oh, like that first moment, that first enlightenment piece. And then to be able to bring the gratitude into the present is just truly one of my favorite things.
Yeah, epiphanies. I wish now that I've written them all down, because they were just one right after the other, right? And it's very small, you know. Miracles don't have to be huge, right?
Yeah.
They can be epiphanies, and I've had, and they're there and they're available to people if you open your mind to them. Yeah, it's not that, you know, we're all here. humanity, I believe, is consciousness experience, the evolution of consciousness, right? So we're all here. We're all part of this kind of spiritual journey. So it's something that beckons for everyone who wants to be open to it, and it wants to tattoo it on their wrists.
Yeah, whatever you have to do to get through your soul contract in this incarnation, I support, as long as you do not hurt anybody else. But I have been trying my damnedest for at least the last 4 years in front of my face focal point where I really had the paradigm shift of the spiritual awakening aspect. But when you retrospect on kind of like you retrospect on your life where you're like, oh, did I take the wrong path? My focus my whole life was not vitality and living forever. I knew from a very young age, it's almost like I was super pissed to be on earth. From a soul level, I was like, you gotta be kidding me, I'm here. Oh, and then you just keep going down through all programming, dogma, blah, 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 blah. And, by the end of it, vitality wasn't my thing. So I'm extremely passionate about finding ways to not only help my mind, but my body last. Because I'm I actually want to live. And I'm still trying to figure out how to explain how riveting and important that is when I talk about it. Because people are like, well, duh, you want to live. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It was dark for a while. It was pretty dark. And I've pulled myself out of places that I wouldn't even send my worst enemy because I love them too. And they just kind of look at you like you're crazy. But the union that you talk about, even when exploring Buddhism alone, because I know you've studied many more things than just that. I don't mean to just highlight. But there is a one universal truth in that work that I've found that I enjoy. And it brings me closer to humanity, and it makes me compassionate when I get into situations where my vibrations rub up against someone that I'm no. I'm oh, we're one, but how?
Right. And I think that's the part that is missing, in Western society. And that's kind of the first three practices. When you hear the Buddhist concept of emptiness, it's so hard to kind of get your head around because we're so trained in our own our own thoughts, emotions, and feelings, that the first three practices of P.E.R.L.O.V.E help you to understand what emptiness is. When you're growing your awareness, you're creating that space, clearing out one thought, emotion, or feeling at a time. And when you do that from your own perspective, from your own point of stuck, wherever you are, you start to see that space and sense those aha moments of wisdom that come through, you start to understand what emptiness is. You start to see it you start to get clarity on what it is. Now, they say enlightenment is beyond our own, beyond thought, right? There's a vast realm of intelligence beyond thought, and we can't actually understand fully what it is. But in finding your own way, which is totally doable, and something, one of the things, Cheyenne, that I struggle with is that I'm an architect, right? I've done a lot of work, but I'm not certified should I get certified in NLP? Should I, my qualifications are my experience, and I know that there are many, many people in the place that I was. And so part of me just wants to say, no, you don't even need any of that certification. You can find your way. You can create this, mind training matters, right?
Absolutely.
Above all else. And it's there. And if you do create and grow your awareness kind of on your own, you will start to understand what emptiness is and some of these Buddhist concepts that when you just go straight into it, a lot of times it takes 2 years of deep study to even kind of fathom what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. The studying is probably my favorite part now. I was never a super dedicated student, and I just always wanted to run. Direct experience is our best teacher. That's what I read in a book, and that's what I remind myself if I'm really good at a new experience or I really hated a new experience. And I repeated a lot when I really hated the experience because I was like, what a freaking waste of time, blah, 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 blah. I only have a certain amount of time on this earth. I can't believe I did this. And then I quit beating myself up about it, and I come back to the same thing you do, where as much as I love to study, as much as I understand from a safety aspect and just knowing your knowledge, certifications, or the proof system that we've still limitedly come up with, like I've met a lot of people with bachelor's degrees that are jackasses. So I say that with a humble heart. So I've been around a bunch of supremely educated people from their certification standpoint, but they still hadn't put anything into action. And then when I meet people in certification programs, they have put so much of the curriculum in action because the curriculum makes you actually experience it instead of just sit there and have someone tell you and you like pass.
Right.
Like it's definitely a mix of both, but I feel the same way as you, especially if I have to like work with a new person in any capacity and you get with that person that obviously feels safer if they know the practitioner has some sort of certification on the wall. I was like, let's just have a conversation. Like I can tell you the experiences that I've had that have qualified me for this. You know, here's my boundaries. I won't go past here. And hey, just so you know, this is what I'm studying. This is what I plan on studying. Like it's just a very transparency in the experience that I've found. But I feel you on my qualification is my experience. Like
exactly. When you were talking, I'm like, hey, I'm certified in the P.E.R.L.O.V.E practices. Okay. I mean, and so I guess that's my point. That's why I don't think it's, that I kind of balk against getting that kind of training. It's like, this is something available to everyone, right? To anyone who wants to start this. But one of the biggest things, it takes dedication. You must do it. You must listen to. I tell people, if you only get one thing from a talk you hear from me, is if you want to learn something, if you want to do something, if you want to create it in your life, make it habit, you must do it over and over and over and over and over again. Because basically in mind training, we're taking old patterns that are kind of all stuck together in our neural net, right? And we're trying to unravel those, find that space to create new patterns in our lives. And that takes time because for years we may have been practicing anxiety or depression, making those habits very strong. So yeah, that's my jam, I guess, is that, I've been there, done that, and that it's available to anyone. Anyone had mother. I was a single mother. I was working full time for most of this journey. And so, yeah, a lot of people, I want to make it available for anyone who wants to find their way. It's
for the collective. It doesn't matter who, what, where you are. It's for you, your soul, you to dedicate to yourself. I love having options, especially in healing. Some things work better than others, but most of the things I've tried, I really do keep them in my Mary Poppins bag because I love every stinking one that I've ever done. They've really impacted me. And when you talk to me about your past self, I always like to say the lower octave of yourself that you've evolved from, up to here, just to send her some love. I picture so much cortisol being dumped in your system, whether you realized it or not. Like I see a consistent normalcy in the fight or flight being used improperly, just in architecture, in your marriage, in your kids' life, in your daily schedule. So not to mention I see supremely left brain because you're an architecture. So when I see you transitioning into not only opening up the right side of your brain, connecting both of them spiritually and scientifically, do you remember what it felt like to feel calm and peace the first time? Like when you had the realizations of, oh, I've actually been operating in this capacity for so long, and how the hell did I do that for so long?
Actually, for me, everything was just so small, just bit by bit by bit by bit, that it there wasn't really like this big. There were some aha moments with the practices, kind of pulling them together, but I was just so hungry for anything that showed up, and so for me it was just it took me 10 years to even realize what I was looking for, and once I did, and you're right about the normalcy, right? It was my architecture can be hugely adversarial. The anxiety, my own self-loathing, and dealing with a bad divorce, totally always. So your thoughts, of course, create chemicals that then send them down to your body. And every cell in your body has receptors, thousands of receptors. And the more chemicals they get for anxiety or self-loathing or whatever, they split, and there's even more. So every cell in my body would scream that. Guilt is a big one for me, right?
Yeah.
I would wake up in the morning and feel the guilt, and then my brain would look for a reason to feel guilty, right, to validate that pattern. So I do know what it feels like now to be in that peace and to relax into that conscious awareness, which is amazing, but for years I had stomach issues, and I still do. And actually, I'm just in the point now where I'm like, okay, I'm going to heal those stomach issues, because I was so gone. Mm-hmm. That it just took me all that digging. That I do know what it feels like now, but to answer your question, there wasn't some big, it just...
Yeah, and I had little moments before that. Like I had one where we ended a yoga practice, and I felt gratitude for the first time and like true bliss and happiness. And this was a week before the week of my Kundalini awakening. This was the first breadcrumb. So we'd finished, I bowed to her, namaste, and I felt this rush of energy like shoot up through my root, and my heart started beating a million miles a minute, and it hit my face and it hit my head, and I could just feel it go all the way through my crown. And I didn't have this terminology at the time, like not as fluent as I speak it now. I'm like, can this really be happening to me? Can this be happening to somebody like me? Like I'm from a small town in Illinois. Like, this stuff doesn't happen to us, right? Like it's not, it wasn't in my framework that they gave me that this was even possible for me. So I was like, what is going on? What's going on? So like I went off to the bathroom and literally like sitting on the toilet after class, and I was bawling hysterically, the happiest, most beautiful, grateful tears. And I was like, I can't believe this. And I was like, I'm alive. I feel alive. I'm alive. Oh my God, I'm alive. And I could like feel again. And I wasn't numb. And I was just like shaking, and my eyes were all big. Like it looks like I just like threw up or something when I came out. And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, there's so much going through my body right now. Like I could just feel the frequencies going through me. And I was like, I'm so happy and I'm so grateful. And I just want to go like save the fucking world. I just want to go hug everybody. Like I accidentally took ecstasy at the end of class. Like that's the only thing I could have compared it to. And I just remember the gratitude. Like I don't think that I ever in my life had felt gratitude, especially to that capacity. And that was one of those moments where I was like, all this stuff that I've been reading and loving and researching about, like, this is real. This is happening to me. Like I'm transforming. I'm finally like shucking away that like darkness that had been with me the whole time. And I'm like, I can't believe I did it. I thought I was going to die still. I can't believe it. So we always talk about like some people, they have just like water drops where it's like, they just like tap. Yep. And then other people, it's just like, bam, wake up.
Yeah, I was going to say it's different for everyone. Yeah, you definitely had that, but for me, I have so much gratitude, but mine was more the water drops, right? And a few kind of moments like, what is that clearing I see,
Yeah.
And oh, wow, that feels good, or this is amazing, And then the goal then is to stay in that, to live in that kind of permanently, which is also a practice, but it's totally doable. And it looks different for everyone, depending on their karma and their intention and, where they're at on their journey. And, but I firmly believe, we are consciousness, right? And I say at the very end of the formula, it's like, though your small isolated self, your thoughts, emotions, and feelings are trying to keep you trapped, your universal, all-pervasive self is showing you in every person, place, or thing, every event in your life, what you need to set yourself free. And I always am so admirable of people like you, Cheyenne, who knew kind of earlier on, like you said, during 9/11, you were doing this candle vigil, right? And I was like, like, what the hell is that, right? So I really admire people that had that early on in life, where they're looking for that earlier on, because I think a lot of this stuff should be taught in school, right? And why is it not taught in school? So for those people that have fortunate enough to have that early journey as part of that early kind of beckoning, is wonderful, right? I love it. I love to see it. So.
That makes me happy that you pointed that out, because so many stories flash through my mind when people remind me like how far back so many different like taps on the shoulder happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it just feels so homey, and I spend a lot of my incarnation realizing I'm just homesick from God. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think I really do just want to go home. Like even if like everything was super perfect here, like I just found out I'm not from here and none of us are from here. We're like playing
Right.
earthlings. So
Right.
when I realized that that's like the main part of maybe my loneliness and my sadness is I'm like, I really want to go home. Like I just like I've treated Earth like a vacation and like a playground and an experimental place my whole life.
Mm.
And I mean, if you met any of my family members, they would probably just crack up like, "Oh, you met Cheyenne. She marches to the beat of her own drum." You know, they try to say it like as nicely as possible, because I got to reject the normalcy that you actually did do. And there was a lot of fear in that normalcy for me. And it's just from going to college and being consistent in college. I didn't even know how I was going to do it, or paying for it, or what degree do you get? I don't even know what I'm passionate about. I gave up on my passions when I met my first love at 15. Oops, because like in my little Midwest mindset, I'm like, I just want to be in love and have a family and do things that I love, you know, and then
Right.
you just spirit was Jesus. It wasn't Kundalini awakenings. It wasn't chakras. It wasn't vibration and frequency. It wasn't sound healing. None of that. Like I wasn't exposed to it, but I always had those breadcrumbs to go back to, and those are lifesavers for me. They're
Mm.
reminding me that I'm connected to something so much more than what is on this physical plane, and I'm so grateful for it every day. And I love when people point it out, because I just absolutely tree branch off into my memory, and I'm like, does anybody have these moments in their lives? And why aren't we
Yeah.
talking about the time where we felt the hand of what God is to us touch us and go, you're here for a purpose. Okay, you have something going on.
Right.
Keep going,
Right.
keep going, keep going. And then I love how you're talking about like the timing of everything, but I always think like the higher you rise, the more the opportunities like flow into you, meeting the new people. Like, can you think of like
Mm.
people during your journey where you were like, we were totally meant to meet, whether it was to work together, to be friends, little amount of time, you know, maybe they've been friends for 20 years. Because those are the people that I rock star the shit out of my friends for just how they showed up in my life at the time too.
Right. Right. Well, for me, it was kind of the opposite, right? Because I didn't know what I was looking for. The people that showed up in my journey, my mother, my first husband, you know, and into my work and moving to and being an architect, there's a lot of very big ego people there, right? And at one point, you know, I was trying to kind of run away from these people, but they kept showing up, and I thought I could set them all around the table because they're reflecting back at me what I need to see, right? So my journey was more about getting out of that huge, twisted ego piece, and that kept showing up for me. But once I did that, and once I kind of started, like I had made two intentions in my early 40s. The first was to retire from architecture before I turned 50, and the second was to have the time and space to write about what I thought I knew back in 2017. So I retired 2 days before I turned 50, and in 2017 I sat down to write. But ever since then, again, like everything had shown up, and for me, it's more like when I discovered the practices, I wrote the book proposal, and because I didn't win the book contest, but in looking at the book proposal, that's what caused me to see the practices. And then I needed a place like an incubator, and this program or this platform called Revel. These two women from San Francisco started this platform for women over 50 who just kind of need more in their life. It was a beautiful platform, and it was wonderful, and it was a wonderful incubator. I could teach these classes, and I could sharpen them and get feedback. And then that platform closed, right? And so, and so things have shown up in the Hollywood Fringe Festival. Showed up an opportunity to do that. I'm thinking, I don't know if this is the right place for these practices, but I can't not do it. And in doing it, I had to create so much space to hold all the bullshit that came up in my mind to actually produce it, write it, memorize it. And I have a huge respect for actors now, and to actually go out and do it that, I don't regret it at all. I learned so much from it. So for me, it's more about what kind of opportunities and events to kind of dig my way out of this massive kind of, like I said, neural net of negativity. And so again, my hope is that people can see these practices and believe that there's a way. And just to be clear, this is just a path. Like you said, there are many, many paths, right? So of course it speak to everyone. But for those people, it doesn't take them 20 years. And so with dedication, no matter how stuck you are, no matter how lost you are, or a lot of times you don't even know what you believe because you're so stuck in those old patterns. You can't see beyond what you believe. And so just to try to get out to people that are wanting to find that way, that there is a way and it won't take you hopefully 20 years to get there, I guess.
Well, when you talk about, we still want the quick fix in a way, like we want to see results. It's 6 minutes a day. Can we get into how amazing that is?
Yeah, that seems to be the big draw for people. So it does start with 1 minute, 6 times a day. And so the first 3 practices, like I said, pledge, evaluate, recognize, are the cerebral part of the formula. And what we're doing, with the pledge, right? Mm-hmm. We're pledging 1 minute, 6 times a day. So just close your eyes and watch your thoughts. You're not judging them. You're not pushing them away. We have 6,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day, right? And so without awareness, we are creating from those thoughts. 80% are repetitive. 80% are negative. 95% repeat, right? So without awareness, we're creating our lives from these thoughts. So what we're doing in pledge in 1 minute, 6 times a day is creating that awareness. And people go like, is that it? Is that all I need? Well, the great thing about a habit is if you do it 1 minute, 6 times a day long enough, it will start to happen automatically, right? You will automatically start to notice the thoughts in your mind, which is key to start this program, because you have to know what's going on in there if you're going to change it. So yeah, if anyone out there, actually anything you want to learn, if you read it 6 times a day, or like there's a couple lines in a book by Jack Kornfield I'm looking at now that I want to know. So I go and I look at them, many times a day. But yeah, 1 minute, 6 times a day is enough. It takes 3 times to even remember something, 8 times to let it sink in, but 21 days to make a habit. So if you do this starting 21, for the next 21 days, you will start to notice. And I teach a form class and people are like, yeah, I noticed that I'm more aware of my thoughts throughout the day. So that's what we're doing. We're pledging that 1 minute, 6 times a day. And if you just start there and then you notice that it'll work, you may want to go further. So
I'm like, keep going. Tell me more.
Okay, so pledge, evaluate, recognize. So the first E is evaluate. And there's a poem by Robert Blythe, the late activist and writer, called The Long Black Bag We Drag Behind Us. And about 10 years into my journey, a great therapist had given me a CD by John Kabat-Zinn, which even before my Buddhist study, I knew how important it was to listen to things over and over and over. So I listened to it over and over and over, and I memorized it, and I transcribed it, and then I lost it. So, and it was pirated. Sorry, John, so I can't even tell you which one it was. But in it, he gives this beautiful explanation of Robert Blythe's poem about when we're young, how we take parts of us that we feel are not acceptable, and we reject those parts. We stuff them in this bag. Right? Good girls don't do that. Good boys don't behave that way. And so as we continue to grow, we reject these parts of us, and we keep stuffing them in the bag. And then as we grow, although the bag is long and heavy, we forget what we stuffed in there in the first place. Okay. But what I call the happiness thief are thoughts, emotions, and feelings that does not forget. The happiness thief lives in the bag, right? Mm-hmm. So in evaluate, we're going to evaluate what the hell we shoved in the bag, right? We're looking for thoughts, emotions, and feelings that are flying under the radar, yet we're creating from, right? Things that we become unfamiliar with, yet we're attached to. Mm-hmm. Because you can have things that you've completely forgotten about, yet you're attached to them through habit, through this neural net of connection. So in evaluate, it's the hardest part of the formula. You go in layers, right? You just start at the beginning, things you might know for anxiety, negative self-talk. You identify those as targets for change. Right? You can start with some easy ones. Finally, that takes us to recognize. So we've pledged to make a habit of watching our mind. Right? We've evaluated our targets for change. And then we recognize them as they come up in our daily lives. Right? I tell people, like, do me a favor. I want you to think of it as your brain, as your thoughts, like your thoughts, emotions, and feelings highway with all the horns honking and screaming and yelling. You want to be sitting in your easy chair next to the highway watching it all go by. Right? So, and recognize when you see those patterns come up in your daily life, you need to recognize them as separate from yourself, right? As something on that highway. And when you do that, you start to create space between yourself and your thoughts, emotions, and feelings, space in which you can respond to them wisely, right? And in responding to that stuff wisely, without attaching to it, without struggling in it, you start to create more space. And that starts to, nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together, right? And it starts to create this neural net and space for these aha moments to come through, even moments of peace, okay? Mm-hmm. Now that's it, right? And so that's the practices. You do it over and over and over and over. You go back for the next few layers in your bag. You start to recognize them as separate from you. You create this space. And of course, you need to hear. I have it in a recording in a class if anyone wants to get these practices and the teachers behind them. But in creating that space, you're starting to create that you're growing your awareness, and then that awareness then brings you to the door of love, right? Of the locate, open, vest, and expand. So, any questions on PER? Should I go into love?
Oh, I'm eating this up so hard. Just keep going. We'll recollect it at the end. So
these practices they're designed to go. You can go back and forth. I mean, I still go back to evaluate. You're always going back to evaluate, looking what the next layers are in your bag. But eventually, when you start to recognize, you create this space. You locate L, right? You locate the space that remains when the TEF is removed, right? And at first, it might be small, and at first things are going to show up to you in glimpses, because often the old patterns are going to come back, right? But when you locate the space, you hold it as an object of meditation for as long as you can, and you'll know it because of its authentic silence, because of the wisdom that comes through, because of the clarity, right? You'll feel it. You can feel it's the absence of thought. It's the wisdom that exists beyond thought. And when you hold it as an object of meditation, you might notice that for the first time that it has movements beyond your body and mind, that it's expandable, right? So you spend as much time as you want locating that space. And once you do, you take it from your head and you drop into your heart, from your head to your heart, because they say the true nature of your mind is found in your heart. Our true nature is found in our heart. So then using our power of imagination, which is highly underutilized, by the way. Mm-hmm. People don't believe that what they can imagine becomes real, but that's actually how it works. So we use our power of imagination to open our heart. And at first, you're not going to feel anything because it's not something you're used to, right? It's not a pattern or a habit in your brain. But when you do it long enough, you can just imagine it opening. You can imagine it like a light bulb that turns on and just shines out, or a waterfall that overflows when it gets enough water. And at some point, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel physical sensations in the body. It can be a cough or choking or not choking, but you actually can feel it. Whenever I open my heart, I literally can feel it, right? And this flow comes out, this amazing flow of energy. You know, they talk about higher and lower vibrations, how you talked about, the higher and level consciousnesses, but this flow comes out. That is the flow of life, right? That is the universal flow that we are actually creating from, whether we're aware of it or not, right? We take energy from that flow. So then we vest or invest, if you will, in that flow, right? We spend time in that flow because on the universal compassion, unconditional love, and infinite wisdom there, because you will learn so much about yourself in that flow. You can spend so much time in that flow, and these, the more you do, it has the power to blow your TEF away at a much faster pace, and you can listen. You can listen for the wisdom to come through. But vest also means to invest in the obstacles that show up in your life, As I said, your small isolated self, your happiness thief, your black bag is trying to spew all of this stuff at you to keep you stuck, to protect its programming. The mind, you will meet with resistance when you come to change the stuff, because, you know, the mind is, it's got this kind of survival mode to keep its programming in place. So your small kind of isolated self is using all your thoughts, emotions, and feelings to keep you stuck, while your universal, all-pervasive self is showing you in every obstacle in your life what you need to set yourself free, like we talked about. So the universe has your back, people. Pay attention. And then we get to the last E in PER.L.O.V.E, expand, which is expanding beyond your conditioned limits. And for me, not for you, Cheyenne, as you said, but for me, finding happiness maybe a lot more subtle than you expect. When there's a slight shift in perspective and you realize that you and the world around you are one and the same, right? That there's two journeys, they say, to go on. One is till you get this glimpse. One is takes almost the entire formula: pledge, evaluate, recognize, locate, open, invest. But at some point along this line, you're going to feel this glimpse of expansiveness, right? Mm-hmm. That you are one with everything. That it is humanity that is the temporary piece here. This is a temporary experience of consciousness, the evolution of consciousness. Right? Underline.
Go
ahead. What's that?
I just said underline that. Like, please, if you're listening, Google it if you don't understand.
So they say that actual enlightenment is beyond our understanding, that there's, like I said, this vast realm of intelligence beyond thought. But they do say that when you stop seeking, you have arrived. Right? And with that is that we've arrived at the end of the formula, which of course that's a very, very quick version of it. But it's backed up by many, many teachers and gurus that all kind of point back to this fact that if you grow this awareness, right, then you realize that you are this awareness. Right? And then you can rest in this awareness, right? You can rest in this awareness and preserve this body and recreate this body and send it new messages to spend the rest of the time that you have in this wonderful experience called life, to try to share this message with others, because you feel, like you said, so grateful. And it is so amazing to like consciousness humanity is the consciousness recognizing itself, the ability to talk and communicate and share and evolve, right? Mm-hmm. And so but you find that gratitude and that happiness not in what's happening outside, but what you know, the knowing, they call it, right? You rest in that knowing. And it's a beautiful, wonderful journey that I highly recommend to anyone. Yeah.
Your program is amazing. It's amazing. I'm lost for words on it. But for the beginners, the people who I created this show for the people in the future that will wake up and they need a guideline to understand when they start digging into themselves, like that purging and almost like that poison's going to come out of them. I want to give them some tips and tricks for when their old habits do not line up with their new self anymore and they start feeling shaky in their new habits. Like I want to give some tips and tricks for the end part of that, when that gunk starts coming out, so you can realize it's a part of it. It happens to everybody. Because especially, again, like when you feel happiness and gratitude for the first time, you don't want to feel darkness ever again, even though it's a part of your shadow work. It's a part of that side of you that you still have to work on. It's just the beginning, you know, just to the tip of the iceberg, so to speak.
Right.
So for you, based on your experience, what were some things that you were able to kind of recenter yourself, knowing that you're doing the right thing, even though you're walking through the fire in the time?
Well, a couple of times actually, Cheyenne, I did fall off my journey, kind of let it go, and life was right there back, like, okay, you're going to need to, you know, it kind of slaps you, like, you know, and so one of the tips is just to realize that if you want to learn something, the things are going. life is hard. Life will never just always be bliss. You are never going to be in those higher levels of consciousness, right? And so when you're in those lower levels of consciousness, you want to look for that space you created, right? You want to realize that those thoughts, emotions, and feelings are coming up, and like a wave, if you don't attach to them, they have no choice but to dissipate, right?
Oh, underline that. It's so impactful the way that you said that. It has no...
Right, there's no choice,
poetic.
right? If you don't attach
really
to a thought,
poetic.
it goes away, right? But if the moment you attach to it, you give it power, right? And so if you find that you're stuck back in it, and you're suffering and you're struggling, that's going to happen. But, as soon as you can, right, create that space, I tell you, catch it, right? In recognize, there's two ways. There's the direct way and the indirect way to recognize, right? The direct way is A plus B equals C, right? I got the awareness, I see the pattern, I caught you, stinky little piece of shit, right? And once you catch it, right, what do you do with it? You welcome it, you have it sit next to you, you release it, you do anything but attach to it. But like you said, at first that's going to be difficult because the happiness thief is not going down without a fight. You're going to meet with that resistance.
We're also so used to attachment,
go ahead.
Right? Not to interrupt you, but we're so used to attachment. That's the other thing.
Right.
I wanted to interject, observe, don't attach. Like when I found my awareness, now I had to train myself because you're so used to being like the hero and taking care of everybody and doing everything. You're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm literally learning detachment and like compassion almost for the situation, but not empathically being like, and like giving your life force energy to the situation when that's not the point of it. It's not to martyr yourself in any of the situations.
Right. That's exactly right. So there's this wonderful indirect way to recognize, right? And that is this: acting in ways contrary to your patterns aids in creating that space between you and your thoughts, emotions, and feelings, right? So by acting with compassion, gratitude, going for a walk, doing meditation, your brain's like, wait a minute, that doesn't compute, right? You're starting to break down those patterns, and creating new ones helps you to see that stuff from a distance. The philosophy or the principle of thought I was talking to you about earlier, or the principle of feeling, is anytime you recognize a negative thought, emotion, or feeling, you should take it simply as a signal to turn around and walk the other way. You don't have to delve into it. You don't have to work through it. You just need to understand it, where it came from, right? Serve it tea, have it come for dinner, right? Just don't attach to it. Mm-hmm. So you have to recognize that when you start to meet with this resistance, you should be celebrating, right? Because that's you trying to make that change, and that's the brain resisting. So this is going to happen, right? And when it does, go the indirect way. Offer yourself some compassion for what you're going through, gratitude for where you've been, sing a song, go out and go for a stroll, go help someone else. And then you will have broken that attachment temporarily. And when you come back to look at it again, there'll be some more space, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's just a matter of really mind training. We're retraining our brain. And those old patterns are never going to go away. I mean, I still wake up sometimes with guilt, and it's like, no, that's just the pattern. Mm-hmm. But when you do that, and when you keep doing that, and you go the direct way or the indirect way to recognize, and you start to create this awareness, it will get easier, right? You just have to have belief in yourself and in this journey. And again, if you want to learn something, if you read anything, I have this class for free if you sign up for my newsletter on my website, PERLOVEformula.com. If you sign up for my monthly newsletter, it sends you a link to this free class. It goes through each one of these practices and the teachings that they were developed from. Take that class, listen to it. It's an hour long. Listen to it over and over and over and over and over again, right? If that's where you want to start with your 1 minute 6 times a day. Just do something consistently, right? And you will start to see change. You'll start to see that path. It's there.
I have not done yours yet. I have looked over it, and I was planning on doing it after we had our conversation, but just from diving through where you've learned to compile all of this information into this beautiful 6-minute exercise, friends, I'm already like this. There's no way this can't work. It has the neuroplasticity training. It has the repetition. It identifies all the things that I really do think connect us. I think loneliness and unworthiness are two things that everybody, no matter how successful they are, or, you know, if they lived all their dreams, like they still have that, whether it's an old pathway or it's still a live wire, they still have it in them. So even when you go to your website, which beautifully done, love your portrait, great presentation, by the way. But as I'm reading through it, like the words that you've caps locked for me, I was like, yes. Like, I remember coming across this, and I still, like you, like, I still know that those old pathways will always be there to be like, hey, do you want to hang out today?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you know, because I have my Mary Poppins bag of vitality over here that I've learned from all of these people. But, again, yours, I mean, 6 minutes, man. And, I mean, it's just packed full of wonderful, amazing things. I love that you sourced where it came from and you even tie your experience into it. But before we get out of here, I just want to say to my beginners that are like, what the hell is going on? You know, cognitive dissonance is so real. Destabilization is so real when you're talking about this stuff that we're talking about. So when she was talking about the pathways, how it's like, oh, the old one will never go away. Picture like 2 pathways in your mind, right? And every day, like the new pathway is what you're building. If you keep building this new pathway, the other one starves. So when you're like, oh, I want to go back into my comfort zone. I want to go do this old thing. Walk down the pathway and see how your new self is like, you know, you're not supposed to be here. You know, you're not supposed to be here, right? Because that you're like, I should have picked my new path. I didn't. It's never too late. It's honestly, if you're dead, it's too late. That's how I'm going to say it to you. But it's never too late. But Google neuroplasticity. Look at a diagram of how neuroplasticity works. Google the placebo effect, for goodness sake. Because I want you to empower yourself to realize that we've really been taught that we kind of are like not in control of our brain somehow in the way that they've educated us. Like we're not in control of our body. 98% of our DNA is junk, like all this bullshit.
Right,
so
that's right.
I'm here to tell all of you, my friends, my beginners, my advanced, whatever level you think you are at, like go just study these definitions alone and these diagrams to really just make you understand it more, because it all correlates. They're all saying the same thing.
Right,
We're
that's
so much powerful, so much more powerful than we could have ever recognized. And I am extremely grateful to live in this time and also recognize the information in front of me and take it and run with it, kind of like you did.
Go watch What the Bleep Do We Know? It came out in 2004. I suggest, have you ever watched that movie?
I'm pretty sure I started it, but you're reminding me to finish it.
Watch it over. What's another thing I watched over and over and over again? Dr. Joe Dispenza is huge right now. He starts out in that movie. He's in that movie. He talks a lot about what I'm talking about. Comes from that movie. It's got a partly Marlene Matlin's in it. It's got part story. If you're totally lost, watch that movie over and over and over again. And I appreciate what you said, Cheyenne. It's like, it's no way that these practices can't work, because I'm not making any of this up. This is simply a culmination of millennial old wisdom to modern day teaching. Yeah. And and we have a forum for people that want to deep dive into it. You can get the class for free, listen to it over and over again, or just listen to this podcast, right? Or this show over and over and over again. You will start to create those new. And I love the way you described it, because I used to call them cow paths. Like if you're from the Midwest, the cows always go down one place, and all the grass is gone, right? I know exactly. But if the cows start going another way, then the grass starts growing back up again. That path isn't as strong anymore, right? I also talk about it as you have to think of your brain as an ocean liner that you've been setting in one direction, and you're wanting to make it go this way. It takes time and energy to move an ocean liner to go in a different direction. Absolutely. But you can do it. Everyone can do it. And it's not hard or complicated. All it takes is your attention.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I've been so excited, and I'm so glad we're here. I can't believe it's over, but I appreciate you and your time, and I really hope I look as good as you at your age, because you are extremely beautiful and vital for your age, and I know it's because of the hard work that you've done for yourself. So
Oh, you're going to make me cry. Thank you.
if someone hasn't told you that today, I'm so sorry, because it's truly an inspiration to someone like me that's like, I just want to be vital. I'm not worried about the, oh my gosh, I have to look good. I just want to be healthy. I want my skin to be healthy. I want my body to be healthy. I want my soul to be healthy, my life to be healthy. So,
well, thank you so much.
like,
You're very kind,
I'm
Cheyenne.
looking forward, send the elevator back down, because you made it, girl. You did it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Woo! And hey,
Yay.
you're welcome here anytime. This is your safe space just as much as is mine. So anytime you want to come back on, tell us about any of your experiences. If you have a new program, whatever, you just hit me up and we'll hit record again anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for what I'm amazed at what you're doing and how far you've come at such a young age, which I love that. So keep going.
Thank you. I'm 18 at heart, I swear. I'm like, woo, we're going out in the world. All right. Well, hey guys, if you want to find Holly McNeill and her P.E.R.L.O.V.E, you can scroll down like you always know how to do. Go past that description, read it later, and I have all of her links there for you. Don't forget to check out all the links I have, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can find us all over the social media. So before we get out of here, I have Nightcap for you again, because I can't quit showcasing these guys for you. Like, I love these guys so much. They're just gonna be so big. I already know it. I brought you Cheap Thrills today. Please go download it. I got the track loaded live, not live for you, but on Spotify for you. But go check these out. This is the end of Cheap Thrills. I will see you the next time. I love you.